Hey, what is up everyone? My name is Sagar and we are back here with another video. And this is the lecture number 5 of our Java and DSA course. And in this particular video, we will be learning about conditional statements. How does your flow of code depend on some conditions? So without making any further ado, let's get started. So first let me create my new Java class, lecture 5, and generate my main method. Okay, so before starting, let me tell you that we are going to use these relational or comparison operator, these less than, greater than, less than equal to, greater than equal to, double equal to, and not equal to. So if you don't know about all these, do check out our previous video. Link is in the description. And we are also going to use these logical operators. So now let's get started with our conditional statements. But what are these? So let us see with some real world example. Suppose if there is a weekend, then you are gonna sleep whole day, and if there is a working day, then you are gonna work. So now your decision will depend on some condition, and that is whether it is a weekend or it is a working day. Same as in programming, our flow of code will depend on some condition. And suppose I have a condition there, and if it is true, then our code will go there, and if it is not true, then our code will flow there. In our spoken language, how can we use them? We will say if it is a weekend, then we are gonna sleep, and if it is a working day, then we are gonna work. So in same as in programming, so we will write it as this: if it is a weekend, we are gonna sleep, and if it is a working day, then we are gonna work. Same as in programming, we have to use these if else keywords to define our conditions. So I will write it as this: if these parentheses. Now we know these are not only used with methods or functions, and there we have to write our condition, and if this condition is true, then our block of code will execute, or else if it is not true, then this block of code will execute. So inside our parentheses we have to use some condition, and that condition should always be a boolean value. So if you are using some condition, that condition should always return a boolean value, or you can directly use a boolean value. I can write it as this: if true, then this block of code will execute, and if it is not true, then this block of code is going to execute. But here it is true, so let me print this. So you can see here it is inside if block. Why? Because you can see here it is true, and this condition is always true. So it is gonna execute this block of code, and it is gonna totally ignore else block. And after it our program ends. So let me write that. As you can see inside if block, and after that program ends. So if I have to write this condition, I will write if it is a weekend, then we have to sleep, and if it is a working day, then we have to work. So you can see here these are the same thing. If weekend, then we are gonna sleep. Same as in programming, we have to write it as this: if our condition in parentheses, then this block of code, and that is saying print sleep. And our next condition, if it is working, then we are gonna work. Same here, if in parentheses our working condition, and then our block of code which is saying print work. So first I will create my these variables: weekend, that is true, and another one working day, that we are gonna say false. Let's run this. As you can see, it is a weekend. Weekend equals to true. So this condition is true and we are gonna sleep. So as it is saying sleep, and after that program ends. But there is a catch. As you can see here, if one condition is true, another can't be true. If there is a weekend, then it can't be a working day. So we only need to check one condition, whether it is a weekend or it is a working day. And if it is a weekend, then we are gonna sleep, and then we don't need to check whether it is a working day or not. We are gonna directly say else. So if it is a weekend, then we are gonna sleep, else then we are gonna work. Simple as that. Let's run this. As you can see here, it is sleep. And if I am saying that weekend equals to false, that means it is not a weekend. And let's run this. There you can see work. So you can also write it as this, weekend equals to true. There, that is a relational operator. So it is saying if weekend double equals to true, that means weekend is true. So we are going to sleep, as you can see here. So now let us take that variable from our input. First I will create my scanner class. So I will write here true. That means our weekend is true. So we are going to sleep, and let us say if our weekend is false, that means it is a working day. Then we are going to work and program ends. This is a cool thing. And now let us take some another example. Suppose we have someone's age, and if that age is above 18, then he can vote, and if that age is less than 18, then he can't vote. So let us take some integer input, and if that age is greater than 18, then we are going to print, and else, that means age is less than 18, then you can't vote. So let's run this. Suppose the age is 12, then you can see you can't vote because our condition is age is greater than 18. And if the age is 20, then you can see you can vote. So if this condition is true, then the flow of code is inside this block, and if it is not true, then it is inside this block. And we have multiple ways to write this condition. As you can see here, age is greater than 18, then we can vote. We can also write it as this: if age is less than or equal to 18, then you can't vote. And else, that means age is not less than 18, then it is greater than 18. So you can write here, you can vote. If the age is 20, you can vote. If the age is 12, you can't vote. This is the same thing we were writing. The only difference is first we were using condition with this statement. That means if age is above 18, then you can vote, else you can't vote. And now we are using condition with this statement. If age is less than or equal to 18, then you can't vote, else you can vote. So there is a small difference, but it is the same thing. And now let us take some different examples. Suppose I have to find whether a number is odd or even. So let me first take that number input, num. Okay, Okay, so we are gonna use this condition to find whether our number is even or odd, and if it is true then our number is even, and else it is odd. But what is that? Num mod 2 double equals to 0. What does that mean? We know that this is the modulo arithmetic operator, and that is used to return some number value, that is the remainder of two number, and here it will return me some integer value, and this double equals to is a comparison operator, and here I am comparing this return value with 0, and that means if there is a number I divide it with 2, the remainder will be 0 or 1, and if I compare it with 0, that means the remainder is 0, and we know that if we divide some number with 2 and the remainder is 0, that means it is an even number, and if the remainder is not 0, then it is an odd number. So let's run this. Let us say our number is 5, it is an odd number, and if it is 8, it is even. That is cool. I can also write it as this: if my remainder is not equals to 0, that means it is 1, so my number will be odd, else my number will be even. And if I have here 5, it is odd, it is still working. So there are basically two ways to write this condition. And now let us take some different example. Suppose I have one number n, and I have to tell whether it is in the range 10 to 20 or 20 to 30 or 30 to above all. So I will write it as this: if n is greater than 10, that means our number is greater than 10, but it can be 20, 30 or 90. So we have another condition to check. So I have to check whether it is less than 20 or not. So I will use here nested condition. If n is less than 20, that means if n is greater than 20, then the flow of code will go there, and if n is less than 20, then our flow of code is inside this block, and if it is less than 20, then I will print n is greater than 10 and less than 20, and else, that means our number is not less than 20, so it is greater than 20, and if it is greater than 20, then we have to check our another condition, that means if it is less than 30, then it is in the range 20 to 30. So if it is greater than 20, then our next condition is if n is less than 30. So I will print out n is greater than 20 and less than 30, and if n is not less than 30, then it means it is greater than 30. So our last condition is n is greater than 30, and that is it. You can see here we are using multiple nested statements, and here if n is greater than 10, then our flow of code is here, else if n is less than 10, then we are gonna write the same, n is less than 10, and if n is greater than 10, then we have to check if n is less than 20 or it is greater than 20. If it is less than 20, then it is in the range 10 to 20, so we will print the same, n is greater than 10 and less than 20, and if it is greater than 20, then we will check our further condition whether it is less than 30 or not, and if it is, then we will print n is greater than 20 and less than 30, and if it is greater than 30, then n is greater than 30. So let's run this. So suppose our number is 12, so n is greater than 10 and less than 20, that is the correct output. And if our input is 45, n is greater than 30, and program ends, that is cool. So we are accessing only one part of our code according to our conditions and our given input. And if our number is -1, that means n is less than 10. Here you can see and our number is, let us say, 22. That means n is greater than 20 and less than 30. But this thing is looking so messy. Can't we refactor it using some more operators? Let me give it a try. So we are going to use logical operators. Logical operators are used with Boolean values and they return Boolean values. So I will write it as this: if n is greater than 10 and n is less than 20. Now that means this condition is only true if both are true. As from our previous video, you can see true and true only returns as true. And if even one of them are false, then our whole outcome is false, and that is why we are using here and. So if n is greater than 10 and less than 20, so I will write n is greater than 10 and less than 20, and then we can write else if. So we can use this else if to define some another condition. If our first condition is false, then it will check our second condition, and the second condition will be if n is greater than 20 and n is less than 30. So I will print the same, n is greater than 20 and less than 30. Else if, so we are using here another condition, and that is n is greater than 30, then we will print n is greater than 30. Else, and the only remaining condition is when n is less than 10. So we will print the same, n is less than 10. Okay, so you can see here if n is greater than 10 and n is less than 20, if both conditions are true, then we will print this, and after that this. First we were writing one if condition and then else condition, so there were only two outcomes, whether it is true or false. But here we have multiple outcomes, so there are multiple conditions. First, whether it is between 10 to 20, the second one is 20 to 30, and whether it is greater than 30 or it is less than 10. So here we have four blocks. First, n is greater than 10 and less than 20, the second one is greater than 20 and less than 30, and the third one is greater than 30, and when all the conditions are false, that means our number is less than 10. You can see here else. So let me run this. If n is 45, then n is greater than 30. If n is 1, then it is less than 10. If it is 15, it is greater than 10 and less than 20. So the code is working the same, and now it is well structured. So we just saw some use cases of nested conditions and these else if conditions. Let us take some other example. So suppose I have two Boolean variables, Boolean pen equals to sc dot next Boolean, and other is paper, that is sc dot next Boolean. So here in this example, if paper double equals to true, so here in Java, if we are using a Boolean variable, then we don't need to compare it with true or false. We can write it as this. After all, we only need one Boolean result in our condition, and that variable either return true or false. So this is the same thing. So if we have paper, then we can write something, else we can't. So I will print can't write. So if we have paper, then we have to check either we have pen or not. So I will write here if pen, then we can write. So I will write here you can write, else you can't. So here first you will check either you have paper or not, and if you don't have paper, then you can't write, and if you have it, then you will check for pen. If you have pen, then you can write, and if you don't have pen, then you can't write. So here you can see if you don't have paper, then the outcome is this. You can write. And you can also see if you don't have pen, then the outcome is same. You can write. So you can merge both of these conditions and use logical AND operator. So I will write here paper and pen. Then you can write. So you can see here, if paper and pen, that means if you have both of them, then only you can write. And even when you don't have any one of them, then you can't write. So let us run this. If paper is true and the pen is true, that means you can write. If the paper is false and the pen is true, then you can't write. So now we know when to use this logical AND operator. And let me give you some other example. Suppose we have here pencil, and I will write here or. So here in this example we have a pen and a pencil, and here if we have a pencil or a pen, then we can write. That means if either of one condition is true, then we can write, else we can't. So if we have pen, that is true, and we don't have pencil, then we can write, as you can see here. And if we don't have pen and we don't have pencil, then we can't write. So you can have some basic observation when to use this logical or logical AND operators, and when to use the nested conditions, and when to use this if else condition. And I will try my best to share all these things as much as possible. So now let me tell you one shorthand to write this if else condition. And suppose I have a number, and suppose you have only one condition to check whether it is greater than 10 or less than 10. We can use the operator as a shorthand for our if else statements. And we know that operator returns some value, and this one return boolean. So I will store it in my bool. So here we have condition if our number is less than 10. So first I will write my condition, number is less than 10, and then question mark. And then my block of code, what I want to execute if this condition is true. And that is, I will write here true. This boolean will be true if my number is less than 10, else it will be false. And that is it. If my number is less than 10, then it will give me true, else false. And I will print out my bool. Let's run this. If I input here 20, it is false. There are so many use cases where you have to use this operator in place of this if else statement, and this operator is called as ternary operator. And now it is time for our practice problem. So today your task is to take 3 integer inputs, that is A, B and C. So you can do this by using this scanner class. And if A is greater than B and it is also greater than C, then you have to print it as A, B and C. And if C is the greatest one and B is the second highest, so you have to print it as C, B and A. I hope you got this one. And the first one to share the code snippet in the comment section will get a huge shout out in the upcoming video. So play with all these if else statements, and that is it for today everyone. Hope you like this video. Subscribe to our channel and share your views in the comment section, and I will see you in the next one.